Hello, my dear people. I'm sorry about the dirtiness of my hands. This candle has a monster wick, and I was trimming it before I came to you, but water won't wash it clean. The soot from the ash needed to make its way into our full moon reading for this full moon in Sidereal, Gemini, and tropical Cancer. And there's a swiftness to this. I almost didn't make it here today because everything is moving at a clip. And tomorrow, especially in the Sidereal, we have a bunch of planets that are going to change sign. And then kind of rapid fire sign changes that'll persist until the 18th of January. So I'm getting a lot of people feeling like there's plenty of stagnation and frustrated energy going on. Got the love in there. I'm traveling, so we're in a different situation. The love was between the messenger and the spiral dance. And we'll put the love over here by the universal matrix of connectedness and the chakras of the sacred mirrors. Little setting up altars as we go, right? So just to say a couple of things about this moon. First of all, if you're interested in sidereal astrology at all, which comes from the placement of the stars, and in the Hindu tradition, it's from the 27 nakshatras, the lunar mansions. Ooh, the trickster energy wanted to pop. Then you need to be listening to Dana Lunn Nichols of the People's Oracle and thepeoplesoracle.com and follow her and listen to her and read her words, because first of all, Black woman, and she knows this economic system from a perspective a lot of us white folk don't. There's that one, transmutation. And while we have that, let me remind myself to say a little prayer for all of those who are suffering, all of those who are grieving, and all of those who are experiencing loss on whatever scale it's happening for you. May we all learn to transmute poison into medicine. Dana Lynn Knuckles is saying, and breathe, by the way. Dana Lynn Knuckles is saying of this moon that suffering is a mirror. And I think that's brilliant. I tried to say something in the blog like that, but I don't think it was as eloquent. What I tried to say is that we share pain to renew spirit. And there's a lot of people who are very adamant about, victim blaming right now, and, oh, don't be a victim, this and that, and saying that that is a spiritual thing. And that's fine. Say what you got to say, do what you got to do. But if you don't come in contact with your suffering, if you don't touch your pain and your fear and any of your emotions, that's spiritual bypassing. Okay, that's exactly what that is. Emotions are ephemeral. They are spiritual by their very nature. And the planets have these energies of emotion as intelligence. It's a longer story, but please feel your feelings. Inhabit your own experience. Don't let someone hijack your lived experience from you. That's how we got into this mess to begin with. Okay, moving on from there. Suffering is a mirror, says Dana Lynn Nichols of the People's Oracle. And when we aren't able to look at the homeless people, some of whom, she rightly points out, lost their homes in the bubble in 2009, 2010, and still don't have a home, and never got all their things back. A lot of these people in California probably won't get their homes back either. They probably were living paycheck to paycheck just like the rest of us. So don't look away from their suffering. Don't look away from the suffering of people in Darfur and Sudan, in Palestine. No matter how you feel about it politically, there's still people suffering there. And if you can't look at it, you can't look at your own suffering. I think she was really right to point that out. We don't want to judge people who suffer for their suffering. That's a form of indoctrination. That's a form of ideology and politics that has no place in the human factor of when people are suffering. And if you can't see that, you're losing your humanity. So stop right there. Family systems populated by indoctrinated people, populated by capitalists, mirror this kind of indoctrination and have these kind of totalitarian rules within them. All of which is to say that our gullibility and our skepticism is being weaponized against us. And at this full moon, that is very, very evident. This moon, in the sun being opposite Mars, retrograde in Cancer, and the moon being right there with Mars. You can see this all beautifully lined up in the sky right now. Look at the night sky because it has beautiful planets in it. This all speaks to the fact that there's a swift turnabout, a look inward that needs to happen for us. A bright fire, a signal fire is set, and it's telling us that suffering is being reflected to us. So don't ignore your own suffering. Look within. Spend some time with it and try not to ignore it. It will help you find right action. It will help you find effortless, appropriate action if you do so. Okay, I was going to kind of go into the tropical a little bit, and, in the tropical, what we have is the sun conjunct Pluto. The moon is opposite Pluto. Big changes afoot, right? Both sun and moon are square to Black Moon Lilith, and she will also move swiftly into Scorpio. And both sun and moon are square Chiron. So that wound, there's a tender, sensitive understanding that's happening in all this fast change, and with Mars supporting the nodes, and all of these emotional patterns are coming up for us. The nakshatra that it's all occurring in, the lunar mansion in the Vedic system, is Punarvasu. This is the return of the light. And it's a full moon. And be curious about your emotions. Be curious about the feelings of others. And consider that it may be auspicious to do so. This is Makar Sankranti in the Hindu tradition. It celebrates the northern movement of the sun, because the northern movement of the sun is said to be more auspicious. And this sun, opposite Mars, opposite Pluto. I'm sorry, it's square Mars. No, it's opposite Mars and square Pluto, is harking back to that 2010 position where the housing bubble broke. And we're seeing the same kind of loss in our communities here in the US, and we need to be able to see the loss that's happening globally. All right, let's take a look at this through the animal cards, and let's find out through, let's say, a Celtic cross spread, what is happening for us. Om Dum Durgaye Namaha, Om Shrim Mahalakshmiye Namaha, Om Aim Saraswatiye Namaha. Om Gam Ganapataye Namaha, Om Namah Shivaya. Om, Om, Om. In our set of circumstances and in the next 2 weeks, we can expect to feel and inhabit and embody joy. Now that seems a little different than what's happening right now. But if what I said in the beginning is correct, and we have to move through suffering in order to experience the unity of compassion and to see beyond judgment to our shared suffering, if that's what renews the spirit, then joy is what's coming. Because after the rain comes sun, and after the sun comes rain, baby. And that's the cycle, right? That's why we're paying attention to the moon. That's why this whole blog, and this is my online journal, right? It's to remind myself that I'm in a process. And the process is from darkness to full light, which is where we are right now, and back into darkness, and therefore back into full light. We don't take a photograph at any point in that and decide that's who we are or that's what we are. We keep moving through the process in order to become. And even in this spread, there's a card of becoming, and it is the last card, right? 44 is an 8. 8 is the number of eternity and transformation. And through that luminous cycle, we mimic the personal cycle of moving from ignorance to illumination, moving from a mundane life into a life that cooperates with divinity. Duality is the nature of the space that we inhabit right now, but it's not the only space, right? There are spaces of unity. There are worlds beyond the dual world. We have to imagine. We have to joyously find new dimensions within the ones that we have. The raw material is here. And the raw material for joy is what we are embodying. What crosses us at this juncture, at this full moon, is beaver, building. And when you've been building in a half-assed way, because this is a 22 and this is a 44, it's like you're only building in 2 dimensions. You're not fully embodying the joy that you could be. And my feeling about that is, that we have an ideology, we have an indoctrination right now where we are only allowing certain people to have the resources, where we're only letting half of the planet use their full capacity, if half, less than half, I would say. And so if you build the foundation wrong and you don't feel supported in your family, in your culture, on your planet, in the world, then you can't reach the joy and the bliss that life is meant to be. So we're being crossed by what we have built. Now, it may sound like I'm saying that what we did was a mistake, but that's not really true, because we only ever learn by making mistakes. Error is the way forward on Planet 3. And there's nothing wrong with making mistakes except that we judge them. There's nothing wrong with people suffering except that we don't help them. We just respond incorrectly. We take the raw materials and use them to build the wrong conclusions. Can we change that? Yeah. And I really believe we will. I'm very optimistic about humanity. I'm very optimistic about where the next 2 years will take us. And I don't hear enough people saying that they are, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. You know, I say a lot of the time that 5 times the ice advanced on this planet. And those were our people back there. And they got us here without even antibiotics. We are resourceful. We are much more than we know. And our joy is dimmed by what we've built. But that doesn't mean we can't reconstruct. And this, I believe, more so than anything else, the years between maybe 2001 and now have been a real colonial reckoning. I know many people are very afraid to say that colonialism is wrong because we live in a colonialist culture, right? We live in an imperial, colonial, capitalist ideology. But that doesn't mean that we can't change that. And by rights, we probably know we should, right? So we are embodying joy in conflict at the crossroads with what we have built. And our foundation is innocence. So might makes right, Darwinism, a lot of those things that we thought we saw in nature, we needed Venus to come to us so that we could respect, so that we could take another look, so that we could look again in order to be able to see the cooperation in nature. And it turns out it's not all red in tooth and claw. It really is a cooperative network, most of it linked by mycelium, that distributes resources evenly, that doesn't reward. It's not a meritocracy in nature. It's a natural cycle. And yeah, some things live and some things die, but it's not like they live or die because of their merit or their fitness. A lot of that has reasons we don't understand. And that's where we are. We're in places that we don't understand right now. I know, science has got it all figured out, and in the next 15 minutes, they're going to unroll the big whammy. But just look at what happened with DNA and understanding genes. That's all collapsing right now because we don't really understand even ourselves. There's nothing wrong with making mistakes while you're innocent. And as a matter of fact, it's the only way we learn. So as long as we're in a cycle and in a process of learning, we should continue to be hopeful about our prospects. And we're being crowned by a teacher. That's a wonderful thing. I work with dogs. Some of you know this about me. And they learn through their paws. They read the earth through the pads of their feet. They touch grass. They touch earth in order to understand things. I think that's what we've lost. I think that's what we built without, right? We forgot that we're animals. And I say so in the blog, right? We are not holding nature in the palm of our hands as Darwinism and all the other top-down hierarchies would like us to believe. She holds us in her hands. And she's about to show us, right? A lot of things. She's actually already showed us some things. The devastation that's going on in on the west coast of the U.S. right now is unprecedented. We don't have the tools. We don't have the understanding. We don't have the wisdom, and we don't have the knowledge to fight the catastrophes that are happening. We don't have the ability to counter them. And I think that's one of the biggest lies of what we've built in imperialism and colonialism. You know, we understand everything. This card says a teacher is coming. And that might make your knees knock a little bit. If you have the proper amount of humility at a full moon, you might. You might take a teacher that's a waterfall or a stream. You might be inspired by nature. And you might teach others to be so inspired as well. We are crowned by a teacher. And I like this. This 15 reduces to a 6, and half of that is 12. 12 reduces to a 3. So half of 6 is 3, which means we began, our foundation had half the knowledge, but we're moving into new wisdom. And the technology of the body and joy in the body is here as well. And that's very good news. What we're moving away from at this full moon is grace. Now, there's a little something. When we move away from the inspiration of nature, and we move toward technologies that are external to the body, when we move away from understanding that we are biological life, we can encounter this kind of a building error, right? A user error. And I certainly see the possibility of that. And in the skepticism and gullibility of Virgo and Pisces, reverse that. Pisces skepticism and Virgo's gullibility. These are coping mechanisms that the People's Oracle uses. We are losing ourselves to this AI, which in my opinion, there is an irreducible factor in nature, and it's us. Everything that we build, and it could actually be, the idea of building artificial intelligence that this is referring to, it all always falls back to needing a human decision maker. Because if you've ever worked with mathematical systems, they're replete with circular regression and infinite regressions that have to be stopped somewhere. More and more data generally gives us more and more infinite regression or, numeric bloat. And a person generally has to step in and stop that programming from becoming haywire. They have to write something, they have to make something that makes it stop. Like pi will repeat forever if you don't cap it with your decision, with your choices. And it's always a choice to move away from grace. And if we as a culture decide that we're going to automate everything and we're going to elaborate upon this mistake, it may be a move away from grace. Now let's see what we're headed toward. We are headed toward gathering. I feel like we've done enough of this. I feel like we've done enough of gathering data, gathering money, gathering the raw resources out of the earth. And maybe that's a warning. But and these two cards are invariably linked as outcome cards with one more card that'll be here. If the teacher is going to teach us to gather something new as we step away from grace and into joy, then it could be something completely unpredictable and new that we're gathering. Instead of gathering matter, we could be gathering ourselves spiritually. which I think this card, this doubling of innocence, this moving away from ignorance toward wisdom would imply. So we're moving toward gathering. We are becoming, what are we becoming in the next 2 weeks? We're becoming patient. So tiny actions, small actions that gather and increase wisdom and joy. Not large-scale elaborate building, but small, concerted, constructive, unified, almost hive mind sort of action. Patient action. And to me, patience and wisdom go together very well. If by elaborating more and more technology outside the body, we move away from grace, then to work very closely and patiently with the technology of the body in a spiritual way would be a positive use of technology. Coming together in a unified way instead of a polarized way would be another very positive and patient use of our faculties. I don't like the idea that we might be moving away from grace with what we're building. That we're building something that is moving us away from grace and toward gathering looks dark. But if we add spirit, if we add say we don't move away from grace, say we stay in grace through patient action. Say we slow our roll on some of these technologies. That's what I'm getting off of this right now, is slowing our roll on some of the technologies that we have would be wise, would be prudent, and gathering more of a sense of unity and patience could be what we are becoming. Because ants act in very deliberate ways. They use their patience because they know that bodies may expire and individuals may pass, but the goal of the collective and the goal to go on, like our ancestors back in the ice ages who survived to pass the ball to us, acted in a patient, concerted fashion. All around us in this moment is gentleness. Now that doesn't really feel like what we're having. But if we truly live in duality, then all this violence does yield gentleness. And it does, I don't want to play this like a doer reading, but it does play like something about what we've built is going to teach us a lesson. And that lesson speaks to us about grace and how following our joy leads us to gather better, more patient outcomes than the original errors that we have been making. And if that's so, then being surrounded by gentleness, which again, those 4 and 8 numbers we find here. So the original error, right, is to work against joy to build machination. Now, if we stop doing that, if we gather differently and gather wisdom, stop moving away from grace, we could be surrounded by gentleness. And we don't really have that in our culture right now, and that's what's breaking our families down more than anything, is that we don't have time to take care of each other. Another brilliant thing that the People's Oracle is trying to get through to her audience is that all labor is caretaking labor. And we take care of each other in a monetized system right now. But we didn't always. And it's new. And it's something we could change, right? We could gather differently. We don't have to gather in the way that we always have. We could gather something new. We could gather care and gentleness. We hope and fear manna. Now, manna and grace together in the same reading are really interesting. Grace is just before manna. And to me, what these two cards kind of symbolize is the fear of the next breath, right? And the hope of the next breath. Inspiration is grace. Spiritual inspiration is grace. And we hope and fear our next breath, right? That is the human condition. That is kind of the suffering, exhilarated suffering I was talking about at the very beginning of the reading. When we touch that together, when we all talk about and share feelings and emotions that all of humanity has, our fears, our hopes, our love, our doubt, then we're inspired together and we can renew spirit. And that's what I'm getting out of this sense of stagnation that everybody kind of feels like we're just dragging through this period of history. And it's because we're not coming together in inspiration. So while we hope to be renewed, while we hope to be re-inspired, we also fear it because it brings responsibilities, right? The next 7 generations need us to carry this project of intelligence on. Incidentally, it is once again a 4. It's 40, and the hummingbird is 44, reduces to 8, and the beaver is 22, reduces to 4. So all these factors of 4 and 8, all transformational. And of course, inspiration and expiration. This is the original and most simple form of transformation that we have. We fear the transformation, and we fear the divine transformation because we feel we may be condemned for our mistakes. But nature is very forgiving. Nature is patient. Nature is kind. Nature is love. And it's gathering. Perhaps. Finally, the outcome card. I like to think of this card, especially in this deck, as what we are becoming. We finish aggression. I make this into a sentence when I do these readings for myself. And the very last sentence, or the very last subject-object coupling, is I finish, and then whatever the card is. And Badger is aggression. This is aggressive healing, though. Badger lives where the healing roots are. Badger's territories are vast for such a small animal. And they're, these ferocious beings that they're almost magical in the sense that they can take on something like an ant, so much bigger than itself, carry multiple times its own body weight. These guys can back down some really big creatures. Badgers are incredibly aggressive. And I feel like there's a sense in which this capitalist, automated, mechanistic, materialistic pogrom that's been running us in our innocence, in our gullibility, is finishing. And that, of course, not right away. I mean, the war machine is gigantic and it has to be disassembled, but there's a way in which we're getting wise, right? We're getting smart enough to be able to see through this game that keeps us on the treadmill of forever war. And I don't know a single person, not one, in all my friends and acquaintances who really feels like war is the answer to anything. I think we're wiser than that. I think our joy forbids us doing this forever and moving away from grace forever. We know it's an error to continue to build in this way. We know that we only gather sorrow when we do it, and what we want to gather is joy. So we need to finish it. We need to be done with the aggression. We need to sit down and talk, and we need people in service to all of us who are willing to do that and who know how to do it skillfully. There's a medicine to this card. The roots of aggressive healing are here too. Where that burrow is for that creature. You know, it's underground, it's obscured, it's occulted. And this spread is revelatory. It moves us from innocence to wisdom. From a 3 to a 6. From a 4 to an 8. There's a sense of doubling here if we finish with aggression through inspiration and expiring what needs to go, letting go what needs to go. Full moons are really good for that. The whole point of it, what it's all referring to, secrets. And that's a 9. 2025 is a 9 year. This is the year of the wood snake, a growing transmutation, a transformation through wisdom. Because this is the card of secrets, this is the card of an earthly wisdom. And it just looks like we've been gathering the wrong things. And something is going to make it pretty clear that we've been gathering the wrong things. And we'll go on to gather anew. When we finish the aggression. This is what we have to end, though. We have to end the aggression, and we have to uncover the secrets. Maybe the secrets of the indoctrination that we were talking about before. The things that make you and I see each other as different from each other. When we're not, we're very much the same. I hope some of this was helpful to you in some small way. And thank you very much for listening.